Hello everyone and welcome back to empowerPOD. Sorry this episode is out 2 days late, by the way. It's been bank holiday and my brain literally was just like, oh my God, it is bank holiday. So yeah, here we are. It is empowerPOD episode 20. Oh my God, it's crazy that we're at 20 episodes already. Let's address the elephant in the room before we all get started. Obviously I'm here on my own today, but the past 2 weeks have been some incredible guests. I can't quite believe that I've had Gary Neville and Megan Davis on my podcast. I am so buzzing. I'm so grateful. All my guests that I've had on have been such fantastic additions, but obviously the past two have just really took the podcast to this like new audience. And if you're new here, welcome to the pod. I'm so excited to have you here. So obviously we are now on YouTube. I'm filming this podcast. I don't usually film solo episodes, but we're now on the tube. So yeah, gonna be uploading this onto YouTube as well. So you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and YouTube. It's a bit weird filming it. I feel like I'm filming a podcast but also filming a YouTube video. So love that for me. But yeah, this week I thought it's just me. We'll have a moment to just have me back on empowerPOD again, because as much as I love having guests on, and there are going to be some great guests coming in the future, I'm sure, but I just think it's also important to just have this like downtime episode that you guys can just listen to and it be super casual. I always get really good feedback just from my solo episodes, so I don't want to like let them go, you know. So yeah, solo ep. Obviously thought I would just start as I usually do, where I catch you guys up on what has been going on in my life. Obviously the past 2 weeks have been crazy in terms of episodes. We've had Gary Neville, we've had Meg Davis. I've been editing, marketing, sorting all of those out. Work has been really busy, but if there's one thing I have to share with you guys, it is, I went to Greece, but that is what has got me back into my reading era. I'm back in the reading era. Now, I feel like there's a lot of pressure when it comes to reading, especially as a business owner, where you feel like everything you read has to be Atomic Habits or How to Build Your Empire. And I'm like, you know, as great as that is, I need downtime. And because I've been so busy with work, I didn't quite realize how burnt out I bloody was. So I went on holiday and I only took fiction books with me. And guys, when I say I have found a series that is so unbelievably incredible. You know, when you first start reading, you start reading like Colleen Hoover, and it's like really crap books, but that sounds rude that I said that they're crap, but they're just like easy rom-coms that are, they're not spiking much intellect. However, I will say they are really great books and I do really enjoy them, but there's not a lot going on. I feel like I've progressed above the level of Colleen Hoover now, and I am now on fantasy fiction. Now, if we are on the similar for you pages, you guys aren't going to think I'm weird, but if you guys are not yet on fantasy romance for you pages on TikToks, you're going to be thinking, what the hell are you on about? So wait, hang on, actually I have the book here. Guys, if you're on YouTube, you can see what I've got on the screen right now, but this is the ACOTAR series, A Court of Thorn and Roses. I started reading this I read ACOTAR a few months ago and I read the first 2 books and I had to actually stop reading them because I wasn't getting any work done. I was actually spending my day reading. Then took the second 2 books on holiday and I finished. And if you've read ACOTAR, you know that 3rd book is a chunky boy. Read that whole thing on holiday, read the novella on holiday, and now I'm on the final book. But apparently there's another one coming out after this, but I'm on the final book. If you have not read ACOTAR, please read ACOTAR. I didn't think I would enjoy it because, you know, when people say to you, this is going to be some rom-com fantasy about fairies, I'm thinking, I don't think I want to read that. But actually, it's been life-changing. And I really think it is important to establish a work-life balance. This has all got a point, me telling you this, by the way. I feel like we are in such a hustle culture at the moment that makes you feel like taking any moment for yourself is like so unbelievably ridiculous. And to me, I just think actually I need my downtime in order to show up as a better person. And also like, I'm sorry, but I just need a minute. So when you say to me, oh, why don't you read? And then you pass me some form of like self-help book. I just don't believe that people read these things and they're like, oh my God, I feel so refreshed after reading that. I just don't buy it. I think genuinely, anytime I've read a self-help book, I will read it and I'll go, oh yeah, that was a good quote. And then I'm like, okay, like it kind of goes into my subconscious a little bit, which is great. But I just feel like we spend so much time on our phones, even with work these days, that I don't want to watch TV in the evening, but I also don't want to read something that's making me think about business or think about work or think about self-development. So actually, reading about fairies falling in love has been quite eye-opening. So yeah, highly recommend trying Akatar and just finding more work-life balance, because I think, especially if you work a 9 to 5, you need to be super like, this is work time, this is my time, and have really established boundaries with it. But also, if you work for yourself, I think it's actually really even more so important, because you've not got you're always switched on, you're always going to be at work. And I think it's really important to actually take time to be like, no, I need to stop working now so that I can just have a little bit of downtime, because I hadn't done that and I just ended up getting so burnt out. I'd obviously had so much going on, like even the podcasts that I've had come out the past 2 weeks, like I wanted them to be so perfect, and I don't think I quite realised how much pressure I'd put on myself for them to go out well, but they did go out well, and thank you so much to anyone who's listened. And obviously if you're new around here, welcome. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of my updates on what I've been up to. I've been reading, I've been working. I went to Greece, I went to Skiathos, which was gorgeous, by the way. If you've not been to Skiathos, it's where they filmed some of the Mamma Mia film. Me and my mum went on a little girls trip, and it was just gorgeous vibes, and it made me realise how deficient I am in vitamin D. So this is also your sign to take some vitamin D supplements if you're not already, because the summer this year has been atrocious in the UK. But anyway, without further ado, I thought let's get into the podcast. This week, I wanted to talk about time, your fitness journey and time, because one of the biggest questions I get across my clients and just in general on social media is, how long is this going to take? And I thought today I would give you the answers, because it is something that I think people are so fixated on, and actually it's a bigger scope, it's a bigger question. So I thought we'd dive into it in this podcast and go through it all. So let's get into the episode. So like I said, the biggest question that I get asked is about time. How long is my fitness journey going to take for me? And regardless whether it is a fat loss journey or whether it is a performance journey, I want everyone to sit down before they even listen to what I'm going to say in this podcast and actually have a realistic chat with yourself about where you are right now. And that is so important, because I get so many people come to me or ask me questions, whether it's my clients or just people who follow me on social media, and they say, you know, how long is this going to take? I want to look like this girl. And this girl that they are comparing themselves to is living a totally different lifestyle to what they are living. They're also at a totally different starting point to what the person who has come to me and asked for my help for is at. So that's the first thing you really have to consider, is what is your starting point? Because if you are someone that has a high degree of body fat to lose, there is no point comparing your results to someone who doesn't have so much body fat to lose. So when you make that comparison, it's kind of a thief of joy for you, because you sit there and you think, well, why have I not achieved the same results in this amount of time as this person? But your starting point is totally different. And I think if you go into your fitness journey with a comparison that is really unrealistic and not in line with who you are as a person, your job, your history, your background, you are already setting yourself up for failure, because the comparison will end up eating away at you and make it really hard to stay motivated in your journey. The same goes for anyone who's wanting to start running. I think one mistake runners make when it comes to performance training is signing up for a marathon when they struggle to run a 5K. That is something that, I have to be honest, really grates on me a little bit, because it seems like nowadays people's goals are measured only by what people are doing on the top level. And it's like there's this whole disregard and disrespect for all of these other things that are actually out there for people to do. Before doing a marathon, you should absolutely have ran a half marathon race. Before doing a half marathon, you should absolutely have worked on your 5 and 10K distance and really slowly building it up. Whereas when you say to yourself, well, you know, this influencer who runs all the time is doing a marathon, so I'm going to do a marathon. I think it's important to have inspiration and take inspiration from that person. But when you then go and put yourself through something that's really similar and you don't have as much time on your hands, you're not at the same starting point, it then makes the process really unenjoyable for you, and you could even end up getting injured and just hating the process. And it's not about hating the process. So when people say to me how much time is something going to take, I say, well, your starting point is so different to so-and-so's, and you need to make sure that you are aware that your starting point is different. You need to be realistic with yourself about your starting point. And whilst you should have inspiration from people who are doing incredible things, you should also aim to look out for people who are in a really similar boat to you, because they will help give you a realistic time frame of how long things are going to take. And that is my first point, because people are impatient. They're impatient with themselves. They're impatient with their bodies. And if you are asking your body to go from 0 to 100, you're going to experience immediately a lot of discomfort. You're going to really hate the process because you're asking too much of yourself too soon. And that can be one of the biggest hindrances in terms of time. And in turn, it takes you more time when you set unrealistic goals at the start, because you end up quitting and starting again over and over and over and over. And I always say, like, you are having to undo years of habits that are already pre-built within you. If you're on a fat loss journey, then, to be blunt, you're obviously in a position where there's been some nutritional changes that need to be gone through. You obviously are struggling with getting movement in. There's a lot of things that we have to work back from and start from the beginning with. And undoing and unlearning habits is not an overnight job. And I think some people want to wake up on day one of their fitness journey and it just be super easy. And the truth is like, if it was easy, everyone would do it. We would have, everyone would be in a fit and healthy body. Everyone would be running races and doing all of this sort of stuff, but it's not easy. And that's why it is difficult for people to begin and to continue with. So the first thing I'm going to say to you guys about time is to be patient with yourself and your own journey, because you seriously cannot compare where you are with where anybody else is in their fitness journey, because your start point is always different and your circumstances are always different. I'm obviously not surprised that as a generation we are becoming more and more impatient, because we have access to so much information. Like, we have transformations being posted left, right and center on our Instagram pages. We have everything at the tip of our fingers, whether it's information, deliveries, materialistic items. The other day I ordered a Revlon hairdry brush off Amazon and it came the same night. And I thought, I ordered this 5 hours ago. Like, things are literally more and more so now at our fingertips, and we can literally get them whenever we want. And the one thing that we can't actually rush is a fat loss or fitness journey. You just can't rush it. Obviously, there are things at the moment which are gaining popularity, like Ozempic, skinny injections, things like that, which I don't know how much I'm going to go into that, but I think it's, first off, really damaging how many people are very clearly doing Ozempic and not just saying, I'm doing Ozempic. Like, just say you're doing it. No one cares. Like, it doesn't actually affect my life if someone is doing Ozempic. What it does affect, though, is the mind frame of a lot of people of believing that fat loss is a really quick and easy process, because it isn't. And anyone who you see experiencing rapid weight loss on your social media and I'm speaking specifically about influencers, there is a lot of influencers at the moment that are very clearly doing something. They are potentially on Ozempic, or they are potentially malnourished and starving themselves and overtraining, which has got its own whole host of issues. I think it's just better for people to own up and say that they're doing it, to stop creating this unrealistic expectation of how quickly you can lose body fat and how quickly you can change your body. And the real issue that I have with things like Ozempic is that it is not a long-term fix for habits. And when you stop taking something like Ozempic, when you stop taking skinny injections, whatever it is that people are doing, the issue is that you are basically putting a plaster over a burst pipe. And then when you stop taking it, all of your normal eating habits, your normal mind frame, your normal activity levels, if they resume, you're just going to end up in the exact same position again, which is why for me, I'm all about like, let's sustainably build this into your lifestyle so that you do train for the rest of your life, because it's important outside of actually losing body fat, outside of anything else. It's important to move your body, because you need to be able to make sure that your joints are okay when you're 60 years old. You need to make sure that you're able to live a quality led life as well, not just live. There's so many people who are just existing in bodies that are struggling because people just have neglected themselves. And whilst I think something like Ozempic is a net positive for people who genuinely need help in losing body fat, who are potentially in a position where they're immobile, where they're unable to actually get to the gym, I think Ozempic is a net positive because it allows for them to actually get to a point where they can start to implement these habits. But when you have this drug that is so openly accessible to everyone, and you have people who could, do 6 months in the gym and see the same results, you could just, that's where it really starts to fry with my head, because I just think, it sets a really unrealistic expectation of how long things actually take. And I think if you are about to embark on something like a fat loss journey, you need people to be transparent about what they are actually taking. And ultimately, to me, I think you need to build habits. You need to build sustainable fitness into your life. It is about so much more than losing body fat, and doing a quick fix is never going to be a good answer for you. You need to make sure that you are actually implementing change into your life, because, like I say, it's like putting a plaster over a burst pipe. It's just pointless. It is literally pointless. So that's my argument on Ozempic. But also, obviously, I understand why people have this expectation that fitness should be an overnight thing. And on the other end of the spectrum, where you have the performance side of things, there's also, this pressure that you should be running really fast all the time, that you should be able to progress your running really quickly. And again, start points are really important. There are some people who haven't trained in a while, but they did used to train as a young child, and then they're able to sort of have that memory again, and they can sort of relaunch themselves back into training and can progress quite quickly. Again, I think it's really important to be very transparent about your background when you are a fitness influencer, and also when you are comparing your fitness journey and your performance journey against somebody else's. Don't be thinking, well, why can't I run that distance when they can and we started training at the same time? If your backgrounds are totally different, then you're obviously going to experience different results. And I guess my overall thing is like, it's really important to just remember that there is so much time that goes into these things, and you do have to sacrifice time. And I think there is a narrative on social media that, oh my God, we can do everything whilst you're just living your normal life. And that, I'm here to say that is bullshit. Like, if you are someone who is currently, you have a goal, you are not doing the action it takes to implement that goal, then you aren't going to achieve what you're out to achieve. So I get it. We're impatient. I get that it's difficult. I get that social media plays a really big role in shaping and warping our narrative on the realisticness of a fitness journey, a fat loss journey, a performance journey. But I really wanted to talk about how long it realistically is going to take you to achieve your fitness goals, because I think it's important to be realistic with people and manage your expectations. So let's talk on a fat loss basis, just because I think that is what the majority of my audience will probably relate to. When it comes to performance, how long will it help you achieve? Well, I guess it's how long you are willing to work towards a specific goal. It depends on what your goal is. Is your goal to just get through a high rocks race? Is it to actually achieve a time? Is it to get through a marathon or achieve a time at a marathon? What is that time that you're wanting to do? There is a lot that goes into performance, and it's kind of not as sort of like black and white as what a fat loss journey is. So that's why I'm going to keep performance sort of to the side and talk more on fat loss. But yeah, when it comes to performance, I think I actually touched on this with my podcast with Leah. If you've not watched that podcast, absolutely incredible podcast with Leah, who's a High Rocks ambassador, and she also runs a coaching business, coaching women to become hybrid athletes, basically. And we were talking about how it really discredits the hard work that goes into training to be an athlete when you have expectations so high so early on in training. And I do stand by that. I think there are people who start their training journeys, and they are just really good at it, and they see results really, really quickly, which is incredible. But I think, there is also this other side of things where there's sort of this stick. I mean, I'm speaking specifically really on High Rocks. There's this stick. A lot of like CrossFitters and people like that will come into the High Rocks sort of event and say, this is easy, this is fine, I can do this, I can boss this. And it isn't easy, and things are difficult, and things take time to get good at, and it's training across lots of different modalities. So if you're new to running, that is something, for me, I'm new to running in comparison to people who run. I am very new at running, and that's been a real area for me that I've had to work at, and it's been grim. Like, I've got to be honest, hold my hands up, don't love running. I don't love it, but I love the way that the High Rock sport makes me feel. I also love the cardio benefits that I have seen from running. So for me, it's worth my time to do. But yeah, I can't then say, I'm going to be High Rocks world champion next year because I've put 6 months work into my running. Like, that is just not how it works at all. And definitely would love to be a High Rocks world champion at some point. That would be an absolute dream come true. But I'm super aware that I'm probably going to be working for the next decade for that. And that is me being really realistic with my expectations for myself, because it does take a heck of a long time, and you are up against people who are not willing to set their goals aside. And that's what I think is the biggest thing with performance, is if you're doing a competition where you're against other people, I think it's really important to remember that every single person that is stepping into that track, that race, they are all out for the same thing, and everyone is working just as hard. So, or if not, probably harder. So I think it's really important to manage your expectation when it comes to endurance events, and just appreciate that things may take a little longer. And also as well, if you set a goal for yourself when it comes to performance, know that it doesn't have to be the next race that you achieve it. Like, you could set a marathon goal where you'd want to get like a sub 3 hour or sub 4 hour marathon. That doesn't have to be your next marathon. It could be a marathon you do in 10 years time. Especially if you're a woman, your endurance is actually better in your 30s. So get on a marathon in your 30s. But that's just what I think is important with performance, is manage your expectation, understand that you're not defined by one race. There's so many different factors that go into endurance racing. There's so many different factors that go into a race day, environmental, external, out of your control, that can affect your time, and you're not defined by it. So take your time with your goals when it comes to performance, and also take your time because injury is really high. Like, especially in High Rocks, I do feel like injury is insane because you're just switching between different modalities all the time. So take your time, because there's nothing worse than getting an injury, and if that injury affects you being able to actually perform, that's worst case scenario. Then you could be affected from ever achieving the goal. So take your time when it comes to performance. But when it comes to fat loss, I always say that you can sustainably lose 0.5 kg to 1 kg of body fat a week. That is, or weight a week. That is a realistic and sustainable target to be working towards. If you're losing crazy amount each week, it's not sustainable. You're obviously overtraining and obviously undereating. So you want to make sure, because there's two really important things with fat loss. There is being in a calorie deficit, but there is also understanding that you need to have enough food to actually fuel your performance. Because if you're going into the gym lethargic and half-arsing it, you may as well have not even gone. So you need to consider when you're doing fat loss that, yes, you need to be in a calorie deficit, but if you're eating underneath your basal metabolic rate, you're putting yourself at more risk, and you're also putting yourself at more danger for burnout, more danger for hormone dysfunction, more just overall just not getting the results you want. So you want to take your fat loss journey really, really sustainably. And you also want to make sure as much as possible you're losing body fat and not losing muscle as well. Because obviously when you are in a deficit, your body is breaking down all sorts of different substances. You want it to break down as much body fat as possible to avoid losing muscle, because the more muscle you have, the more definition you're going to have. And again, both of these things take time. So yeah, that is what I would say to you, is realistically, you could see a loss of 0.5 kg to 1 kg of body fat. That is a realistic and sustainable target for you. But I also wanted to touch on the fact that I think losing body fat and reaching an aesthetic goal, it's something really close to my heart, I'm not gonna lie, because I really struggled with only having aesthetic focused goals for a really long time. And you have to do a lot more mental work than you realize when you go on a fat loss journey. The realisticness, and from what I've seen as a coach, is that a lot of women who are, obviously I'm men as well, but just from my experience as a coach, when you are in a fat loss journey, there is always sort of coupled alongside of it some form of body dysmorphia, some form of negative self-talk, some very obsessive body checking. And these things need to be worked through, because you can bet if you are someone who is super consumed with how you look, super obsessed with body checking, and really just not in a positive mental space, you are going to struggle to even see the results that you bring in. And I know that that seems really crazy, because you might be thinking to yourself, well, if I can see the scales going down, I'm obviously going to be buzzing. But the truth is that a lot of women who do embark on a fat loss journey, even when they see the scale go down, they still don't necessarily trust the results. Until I put a comparison photo together, they go, oh, right, yeah, I can actually see that. But they're still not happy. They're still not satisfied. And I think you have to detach your worth from your weight. You have to detach your worth from the way that you look. Because actually, if you are someone with excessive body fat, your main priority in losing body fat should be, I am losing this to live a healthier life. Because ultimately, if you are someone who is overweight and underweight as well, if you are someone who struggles with eating and you are therefore, very much underweight, there are a lot of health complications that come with both of these issues. Obviously, I'm going to leave in the description, if you are someone who is struggling with eating and any eating disorders, I am going to pop a link and a number in the bio before to help you guys get some support if you are going through that. But it should be a priority to think, I need to lose body fat because I need to get myself into a healthier state, or I need to put on weight because I need to get myself to a healthier state. And I think that should be your number one priority, your number one goal, because when you are caught up in the aesthetic side of things, you're also having that negative self-talk and that negative self-perception and that body dysmorphia, you then find yourself in a position where you're not seeing the results that you want aesthetically because your brain is not allowing you to. Your brain then gives up because it thinks, why am I doing this when I'm not seeing results, even though you will be seeing results. And then you sort of end up in this cycle of like continuing to add body fat on, or continuing to go in the other direction with your eating disorders. And you end up in a pretty difficult, repetitive cycle. I hope that makes sense what I'm trying to say. Basically, you have to detach from the aesthetics when it comes to a body fat loss. And understand that what you're working towards is living a healthier and happier life. Because when you're just caught up in the aesthetics, I think it's just hard. Like, I think anyone can relate to this. You're constantly caught up with, how do I look? And actually we should be thinking, this is about me getting healthier. This is about me feeling happier. And yes, when you start to do that mental work and you also look at it differently and from a different perspective, I think you then find yourself in a position where you actually find the process a little bit more enjoyable, because that's the main thing I think that people really struggle with, is that they struggle to enjoy the process because they're caught up in the aesthetics of it, and they don't have their dream figure yet. And ultimately, if you've not done the mental work, you're never going to get your dream figure, because your brain is not going to allow you to see when you've reached your dream. Does that make sense? Message me if you're struggling with that, because that is something that I really work through with a lot of my clients, because I think that the mental side of your fitness journey it's even to a degree so much more important than the physical side, because physically everyone knows how they want to look, they know where they want to be, but actually the mental side of it, I think, is something people really forget, is that like, oh, I actually need to be able to believe that I look like that now. And even though that sounds really silly, a lot of people don't recognize when they reach their goal. And yes, it is a slog. It is a slog. And in terms of time and how long it's realistically going to take you, well, if you're someone with excess body fat, it's going to take you longer than someone who's not got as much body fat. That's the truth. That's the realisticness of it. But manage your expectations. One thing I always try and get my girls to do is, instead of looking at like a massive goal, if you've got a lot of body fat to lose, instead of looking at a big number that seems really far away, just small increments, just chipping away. So you might look at, your first goal, rather than it being I need to lose 30 kg, your goal should be, let me just get 2 kg down. And once we get there, right, okay, what's next? Another 2 kg. And just work like that, because you're going to be ticking things off a lot quicker, and that's going to make you feel more motivated. Whereas imagine you're not ticking anything off for a year. That's obviously super demotivating. So break your goal up if it's a bigger one, and detach your worth from the number that you're seeing on the scale, and work on the mental side of things. Because also when you work on that as well, the time's not going to be as important, because you're going to be more fixated on the journey and the process, rather than and how good you're feeling, rather than how you're looking in the mirror. Because how you're looking in the mirror, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, really doesn't matter. I think what I find really tough as a coach, and something that makes me like quite upset actually, is just when people don't realize their progression and how well they're doing, because they don't feel like they look the way that they want to look yet. And ultimately, like, obviously to an outsider, you can say, oh my God, you look great, you look fab. But they become really demotivated, and they become really like, I'm just going to give up. And I always think to myself, no, like, I wish we could get you to reshape the way that you're thinking. And that is what we work to do. But I wish women didn't feel this pressure to be perfect. I wish they understood that things just take time, and we just should strive to feel healthy and feel good. And I wish people didn't want to quit because things take time. Because, when you're doing like a degree, I always see this quote, and it talks about getting a degree, and it's like 4 years are going to pass anyway, so you may as well do what you want to do. 4 years are going to pass. It's going to take time, but they're going to pass anyway, so I'm going to do that. I think we need to transfer that over to something like a fitness journey, because, people are more than happy to sacrifice a lot of time because there's a career goal at the end. There's a monetary value, or there's something at the end of it, like a job. And yet when you flip the switch and say, right, your fitness journey could take you 4 years to get to exactly where you want to be, and this is obviously talking a really big goal. If you flip the switch and say it's going to take you 4 years, people go, oh, no. And they're really reluctant to do it. And, I am probably, I would say 4 years in now. And it's been the best journey ever. Like, it's just been amazing to have this time where I take time for me and work on me. And if you've followed me for a while, you will know that I suffered with depression and anxiety just after COVID. Really, really bad place. And I'd already been going to the gym, and then I really got into the gym, and it just helped me so much. And this is why I'm just such an advocate for, like, the gym is so much more than how you look. It's so much more. And if you're feeling low in mood, if you're feeling tired, if you're lacking productivity, and you don't get your water in and you don't go to the gym, that's the first thing that you should be implementing. And I tell you now as well, you will show up as a better girlfriend, better partner, better employee, better sister, brother, whatever. You will show up better if you take time to work on yourself. And there's nothing wrong with taking that time to work on yourself as well. And yes, it's going to take time, but when you start to realize the process and start to incrementally feel better week in, week out, and stronger week in, week out, the time thing becomes a really minimal factor, because you're just making so much progression in every other area of your life. So I thought we would finish off just with some listener questions. Guys, if you want to send me a question, if you want a listener question, this is going to be a little segment, by the way, that I add in to the solo apps. Just message me on Instagram and I will add them in. So the first one is, I'm struggling to manage everything alongside work. Do you have any tips for doing it all? My biggest tip when it comes to work, and I actually had a call with a client about this, actually 2 clients about this. The biggest thing with work is you need to establish your boundaries. If you've not listened to the How to Balance Your 9 to 5 podcast, it's the first podcast I ever did. Scroll down, give that a listen to, because I stand by everything I said in that. But the biggest thing is boundaries with work. If you are contracted 9 to 5, you get into work at 9 and you leave at 5. If you have too much work to do in that time, that means you're doing overtime unpaid. Sorry, goodbye. That's not my problem. Arrange a meeting with your manager to discuss your workload, discuss where you're, not being able to manage it all, because your time outside work is precious. It is your time. If you then bring into the fact that you have family, boyfriend, kids, dogs, whatever, your time is getting chopped up. And if you are dedicating so much time to a job that would replace you tomorrow, and you are not giving yourself 30 minutes 3 times a week to go to the gym to live a better life, live a more quality-led life, then you need to work on what your priorities really are, because no one should have their job right at the top. Your health is so important, and you need to establish boundaries with work, because a lot of the people who come to me and say that they have no time because of their job just don't have the right boundaries in place with their job. And this is not coming from someone who's always been self-employed. I have worked full-time. I understand. I run my own business now. I have a lot on my plate, but I have to have boundaries in place as a business owner to allow me to get my stuff done. If my training is a priority to me, then I make sure I get it done. And when I worked in a 9 to 5, I got myself up in the morning and I trained, and I would not get to my desk until I needed to be at my desk. And that's just, it's the reality of it. Like, you have to be brutal. You have to be blunt. Your time is your time. And yeah, if work is overwhelming, then you've got to speak to your manager about that and establish it. You're only contracted to be there for a certain amount of time. You're also entitled to your hour lunch break. So you're doing nothing wrong to take time out and do that. But go and listen to the podcast I did on 9 to 5, because I think that would be really beneficial for you. And the other thing I would say is, obviously, you just need a routine and a workout routine that works alongside your schedule. So there is no point trying to copy an influencer's routine who is doing 10 workouts a day. You need to find something that is relative to you. And listen, if you can only get to the gym for 20 minutes is better than nothing. And that's what I think people need to realise. And if you need help with that, message me, because we can look at some coaching, because I think like everyone I work with is someone who is a busy 9 to 5er with kids, with dogs, with all sorts, and we make it work and we see results. Really lost my groove with fitness recently. Do you have any tips for getting out of the funk? I relate to this so much. I think everyone is going through a little bit of a funk at the moment. The past few weeks for me were really tough, actually, with fitness. So the biggest thing that I would say is, it's really important to take time to understand why you're in a funk. Are you not enjoying your training? Are you setting unrealistic expectations for yourself? Sometimes people will say they're in a funk, but they've trained like 3 times a week and they've not trained anyone else. But they're like, well, I had 4 program sessions. And it's like, okay, well, can you realistically do 4 program sessions each week? If the answer is no, then it's literally a case of being like, I can't manage this, so I'm going to reshape my program and make sure it's aligned. And also, like, if you're not enjoying your training, that's fine. If you don't, and I strongly suggest this, if you don't enjoy being a hybrid athlete, it's okay. You don't have to do high rocks. It's fine. I think people feel this pressure that they need to be doing training that they don't enjoy doing, and it's completely fine. If you love hip thrusts and love training your glutes, go and do a strength training program. If you love doing the hybrid training, do hybrid. If you love karate, go and do karate. I don't know where karate came from, but find movement that you enjoy. And I do think as well, another really great thing for getting out of a funk is going to classes. Oh my God, I think it really helps. And that was what I was doing, because I was going to the gym and I was doing nothing. I may as well have not gone. So I started just booking classes. You've got PTs there. Obviously, I was just going to F45 and Hybrid Performance Centre with Cami. But go into a class where you've got people shouting at you, you're super concentrated, you've not got your phone anywhere near you. That's my biggest tip for getting out of a funk. It's about being kind to yourself, but you also have to have a stern word with yourself. Like, you should be moving your body. You're obviously feeling like that's something that's missing from your life because you're feeling in a funk. So you know what it is that you need. And sometimes it is about being, right, I've been kind to myself for a couple of days. I've let myself have a few rest days. I've let myself have a deload week. Now let's go. Let's get back into it, because you have to have these words with yourself. You have to be disciplined. And sometimes where you build that discipline is on the sessions that you really, really don't want to do. So yeah, book a class, relook at your training program and go from there. And the last one I'll answer is, which are the best running trainers to buy? And I get this question about 3 times a day. I'm not even kidding. I don't know why I get it so much. Get a gait analysis is my main thing. I don't really like recommending trainers, to be honest. You guys know which ones I have. I obviously have Vaporflies for interval and speed training sessions and obviously races. The new Puma Deviate Nitro 3s I've got as a new high rock shoe, which I really enjoy. Did a track session in them this morning. It went quite well. They're carbon plated again though, so don't get them for everyday running. I have been using the Adidas Boston 12s, but I've got to be honest, I realised the first pair that I bought were from the men's section, and the second pair that I bought were from the women's, and the women's ones are not agreeing with my feet at all. They were for a while and now they're not, so I guess I have men's feet. That is obviously the only answer, is that I've got men's feet. So yeah, I mean everyone I know that uses Adidas Boston 12s really recommends them, but I'm having a bit of a funny time with the women's ones. So if you've got fat and big feet like me, you may need to go for the men's. But they are good quality in terms of wear, and the men's ones that I used for the half marathon training were amazing. But again, get a gait. It's not worth wasting your money. It is not worth wasting your money on a pair of trainers that aren't going to work for you. So go and do that. Buy the shoes they recommend. If you don't want to get them in the running trainer shop, that's fine. Just get them online a little bit cheaper or whatever, but also support local. But yeah, I think that's my biggest advice. Sorry, I know it's an annoying question because people go, I just want you to tell me which running trainers to get, but I don't want to be someone who recommends you a pair of running trainers and you have a bad time with your feet. But yeah, guys, I'm going to leave it there for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Solo Ep. I'm just so grateful for all of you tuning in and all the comments you guys send me. It seriously makes my day. This is literally what I want to do. So thank you so much. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Please subscribe to me. Don't want to beg it, but please subscribe. And obviously, if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, then you can follow, rate, review. Would love it so much. It really helps the podcast more than you know. So yeah, guys, that is everything for this week. If you've enjoyed this episode, let me know and make sure to tag me in any stories. And I will see you next week on the next one.